As you guys know, the NBA and their commissioner, Adam Silver, has been on the forefront of sports betting. He said, hey, we know this is going to happen, so how do we get ahead of it? Let's get involved. Let's figure out how we can monetize this instead of just pulling the wool over our eyes and pretending it's not going to happen. So we've heard for years now that things like this were going to happen. If you have a DirecTV account, you can watch alternative streams of baseball depending on which team has the announcer that you want to listen to, which I think is absolutely incredible. And that's exactly what Cabby Richards, Tim Doyle, and myself are doing with BetMGM and the NBA. It's so awesome because we're talking about the in-game perspective. It is such a unique broadcast. Sure, we talk about, wow, that was a great dunk or a nice pick and roll, whatever it may be, but it's almost all betting related, right? Hey guys, I can look over here on my iPad and say, wow, current in-game line is 245. This one went off at 222.5. At this point in time, I think there's some value on betting the under, and I get to give my professional insights as someone who could not call a basketball game for the life of me. I get to call it from a betting perspective, and it's been so fun, and I've been so happy to be part of that experience.
So really, when we think about people and companies that want to get into the sports betting ecosystem, they really need to be thinking about these alternative broadcast messages, content development, and even content delivery, because this is a whole new stream of potential business activities for people nowadays, isn't it?
Absolutely, Craig. And I think it's just the beginning. Now, this is just what the NBA is doing on NBA.com or their NBA app. It is a pay per service. So you can either buy one game or you can have a service for an entire season. Some people already have the membership as part of their NBA.com membership, whatever it may be. But I do think we're going to see more leagues and more businesses jump on this kind of, as you mentioned, an alternative stream. I think that there are people that are interested in listening to it. You know, we've saw Brent Musburger years ago when he was still announcing. He'd say, that late touchdown really helped some people, but he couldn't say, wow, that late touchdown just affected the side and the total on the game. What a momentous shift change here in Vegas or in the betting market, whatever it may be. Some of us knew what he meant. Others just pushed it off as just a generic comment. But it is crazy to think about how many of these games truly do come down to the wire, either for the side, the total, the second half, the third quarter, fourth quarter, whatever it may be. So it makes it really exciting throughout the entire stream.
So let's segue into that, because you're making my segues very easy today, Kelly. We didn't plan all these segues, everyone, just so you know. But let's talk about that idea of the league's involvement much more now in this ecosystem of sports betting, because as you said years ago, very hands-off. It was pretty much for the longest time really just legal here in Las Vegas, or at least being executed here and operated here in Las Vegas. But now leagues are much more involved. So what's the story? What gives here?
So Craig, not to humble brag here, but I wrote an article for the New York Times back in 2014. It was one of the coolest things I got to do at that time. And I remember being such a bad writer that I even had my mother, who was a journalism major, help me edit it, because I go, Mom, I cannot submit this to the New York Times, but I had the data and I had the right idea. And that was that billions and billions of dollars were going to the offshore market. How do we keep that money here in the United States? Because people are going to bet regardless, whether they're betting in Canada, whether they're betting in Costa Rica, or some obsolete island in the Caribbean. They're going to do it. And I mentioned Adam Silver, and now other leagues are starting to jump on board because it's no longer federally illegal. I think keeping the money in-house just makes the most sense, especially when they can have branding initiatives, as you show here with BetMGM, William Hill, FanDuel, whoever it may be in each state. We know that we're going to see things progress quickly, as in having betting kiosks at these arenas. We know that you're going to be able to have great Wi-Fi. I don't know if anybody ever tried to bet a game about 6 years ago at a stadium. Talk about infuriating. I'm supposed to be watching the game. I'm running up the stairs to try to get a betting signal so that I can bet another NFL game, even though I'm supposed to be enjoying the one that I'm at. Those kind of things are funny, but you know, these new arenas are all chock full of 5G Wi-Fi so that everybody can get in on the action. And I think that's why leagues are so excited. Bottom line, there's so much money to be made in this market that you either adapt or you get passed by.
Yeah, and that's a great a concept that we've talked about in small business, where it's adaptability, flexibility, scalability of your businesses is really what the league's approach to dealing with sports betting is. If we keep those three things in mind, that we can partner with these organizations, and there's much money to be made, as there is a lot of content to be developed as well.
Yeah, content is on the forefront of what we do at Bleacher Report, what we do at Wager Talk. Sure, there's some sales dynamics off to the side, but content is king, especially with what we're seeing with the younger generations. The more eyeballs you can get on something, the more dollars it inevitably generates.
And the idea, so I wanted to talk to you about kind of the perception of sports books and sports bookies and the whole idea. Yes, these are some classic images you see here, kind of old school images, but this is a big deal because was really a stigma for this industry for decades, wasn't it?
And I mentioned that several people really helped catapult me and put me into the limelight. And I think that's why they said, here's this 5'3" petite woman from Kansas. She's got a mouth on her. She enjoys sports. She can talk about betting. Let's see what we can do with her and to help with that perception, because this is no longer. Yes, you're going to see the old gentleman maybe with the fedora smoking a cigar in some sports books, but most of our sports books, even here in Nevada, are now becoming smoke free. You have such a diverse group of people. You see women, you see people of color, you see people that are not the guys shown in these pictures anymore. Everybody wants to get involved from a sports betting aspect. And I think it's so incredible that we're starting to see that finally, that generalization break down.
Yeah, it's so important because we're stuck in those kind of stereotypes, and really today, when you talk about the kind of the epitome or the model of what a retail sports book looks like, it kind of looks like those two images, and we shared this slide on a previous presentation, but there's tremendous amounts of color and energy, and of course we took these. I took these pictures when there weren't a lot of people in them, so normally they're packed full of people, but again, it's just a completely different model from what that old school perception is, isn't it?
Well, Craig, you're using the Westgate Sportsbook here, so I'll use them as an example. I do a lot of business with these guys. These guys call themselves the king of screens for obvious reasons. They have up to 15, 20 different games on at once. During an NFL Sunday, this is the best seat in the house, and people pay $3,000 for a booth. There's a $5,000 clubhouse that I personally really enjoy to rent out when I have a big group of friends and family in town, because it is such a fun experience. You get the energy of the crowd. It is almost as good as going to the game itself. These are the things we're starting to see with certain sports books, and then we're starting to see other sports books have a trimmed down approach, particularly in some of the smaller states, Indiana, West Virginia, wherever it may be, where they have a few screens and some seats, but they're more focused on mobile betting. So we do see both sides here. This one is my personal favorite. Obviously, who doesn't want that energy and that excitement? I mean, the national championship game 2 years ago, Texas Tech, Virginia, was the most electric sportsbook scene I've ever seen in my life. It was incredible. And if you haven't got a chance to experience, I highly recommend it.
And the other avenue that you talked about, even a different perspective, is again, we shared this with our last presentation when we had John Lukasik in, the idea of the fan caves and bringing in a younger demographic, and again, another diverse demographic, and introducing them into an atmosphere where they love the experience, and they're going to spend money on food, beverage. Oh, and by the way, they're also going to play some bets. What's the story? Is sports betting intrinsically a social experience, in your opinion?
So, Craig, short answer, yes. I think another thing to consider is what people don't realize is the handle of sports betting compared to penny slots is literally pennies, right? So we have to figure out how to we get the people in the book. How do we get them to spend more money? Well, in Vegas, we charge $12 for a cocktail. So you can sit on this couch, maybe get some bottle service. You can also play Xbox with your friends. You can watch horse racing. You watch 4 games at once. These kind of experiences are so fun. I always highly recommend them for bachelor parties, birthday parties. Even bachelorettes are starting to reach out to me and say, hey, we want to go watch our favorite alma mater, Penn State, play on Saturday morning. Where should we go? where maybe they don't want that smoky sportsbook experience. Maybe they want that higher end. They want the better food. They want bottomless mimosas, whatever it may be. These are the kind of experiences we're starting to see in Vegas. And when I was in Atlantic City, I saw as well. I think that they're a unique experience. You get your own server. It's not that quintessential Vegas experience, but I think this is the future.
So really, from a trend standpoint, there's a clear, much more of an emphasis, Kelly, on mobile on the East Coast. But you think that this model could certainly work, maybe not in the extreme elaborateness of how these sportsbook are, but the retail sportsbook model can still work on East Coast where even mobile betting is king.
I absolutely agree. Listen, as the landscape has changed for the last 5 months for some of us, every opportunity I get to go out, I want to go out. I want it to be worth the experience, right? Whether it's at dinner, whether it's going to a sports book, and these unique experiences are going to have a unique demographic. I'm going to go ahead and say it's probably mid 20s to mid 40s. People with disposable income, people that want to bet on sports, people that are sports fans, but also prefer those nicer cocktails. They prefer that better selection of food. I think that's kind of the thing we've started to see a shift as well, where, maybe somebody wants a charcuterie board and a bottle of wine. Well, that didn't happen outside of the Wynn Sportsbook 5 years ago. You sat there and you waited for the cocktail waitress and she brought you your vodka soda and it took 20 minutes. It was free, but you got to tip a couple bucks, whatever it may be. That experience is really starting, I've noticed, to phase out. And we're seeing places like this, Legacy Stadium, more notably at Venetian. Sure, you have the Buffalo Wild Wings and the Dave & Buster's of the world, but in my eyes, this is a nicer, upgraded version.
Yeah, it definitely is. And when we talk about the idea of kind of small businesses getting into this world, we kind of think about a lot of different opportunities that come up here. And the first one I wanted to kind of talk to you about is the marketing aspect and kind of leveraging that overall atmosphere, whether it's in the sports book or even in the in the mobile world. It's a great opportunity to partner with these different sports wagering app companies and physical locations to really help leverage your small business.
It really is. And I think that marketing is something that I've evolved with. Now, having a marketing background, I didn't learn that much about marketing in college. I was in that very interesting phase of you still got to pick up the phone and cold call before social media was really on the forefront. And I think that marketing, and particularly free marketing such as social media, is absolutely huge. If you can brand with even some of these smaller sports books, as we see the state of New Jersey has several smaller sports books, and I don't know specifically about the DC area, but I can anticipate that there will be more people entering the marketplace if allowed to do so. I think this is a huge opportunity for businesses.
And of course, it's such an event-centric business, really, when you talk about the really big sporting events, Super Bowls, Final Four, those types of course, the playoffs that we're in a lot right now with the NBA and the NHL. These big events where you can utilize the sports book area to really host these events and drive a lot of incremental revenue to your business.
Absolutely. Obviously, focusing on big events is huge, but this month of August has been the most unique time we've ever seen. You have the NBA bubble, you have the WNBA bubble, you have the NHL, you have MLB, you have soccer going on in Europe. There are so many sports that all of a sudden we were so starved to now we're so excited to have every opportunity to bet back that sports are almost on 24 hours a day if you include Korean baseball and several other, Russian table tennis. I don't know if anybody got involved during the whole sports shutdown here in the United States, but there were some times at 3 a.m. I said, okay, I'm going to tune into this because I need that excitement of sports being back. But yes, I would recommend getting involved in any type of event you can. Obviously, you have to decide who your customer is, who your client is, but I think that's something we can all get around. I mean, I live on the West Coast. Having NBA on at 10:30 in the morning is so exciting.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's great to have so much diversity of sports out there. It means I'm at the top of my Russian table tennis pool right now. So that's always a good sign. The next thing I kind of wanted to tackle was some new ideas. And we've talked about a couple of ideas that uh, diverse businesses can kind of jump into. And a lot of this is surrounded around, again, a lot of it's content production. But think in the terms of, let's talk about affiliate marketing, teaching of sports betting, referral, review sites, sports blogging. A lot of this has to do with either partnering with sports betting businesses or creating content for sports betting businesses. Where do you see the future in this kind of idea, Kelly?
There's the future to me is so bright. I think there is so many moving parts and it's literally a day to day change. And I think it's going to continue on that trajectory for some time. More and more companies wanting to get involved, more and more people joining the space. There are several guys at Bleacher Report who may have lost their job because we are now phasing out writers and things of that nature, but they had transitioned themselves 6 months ago into the sports betting world. And it's a really interesting thing because I do think that they're also evolving as well as businesses because we know that betting is the future. As far as teaching sports betting, for example, I'm hosting, well, tentatively in the new year, I'm supposed to be hosting an event in New Jersey where we're actually putting on a sports betting seminar. Something like that could even be small for businesses to say, hey, listen, in our local area, we have this guy who is a great sports bettor. He's going to come in. He's going to teach you guys the basics. I joke with my mom all the time. I told her to jump on this call as long as she promised not to correct my English. I don't know if she's scared, but she said to me the other day, hey, I need cliff notes. You speak sometimes too in depth and use too many slang betting terms. So something I'm trying to work on because there are so many new people to the space, but to be able to teach people some of those terminologies or whatever it may be, it's an interesting concept, but I think it needs to happen. And as far as building your own brand, I think that that's the number one thing that businesses can do to market themselves. It is so necessary to build your brand and partner with those right affiliates. And I think you're really missing a big opportunity if you choose not to do so.
And then really the other avenue, and I know that this isn't necessarily an area of expertise for you, and it isn't for me either, but we're talking a lot now about the concept of esports. And esports is growing, and we're doing tremendous amounts of learning on esports. Bright future for esports? What do you think?
Oh my gosh, Craig, you hit the nail on the head. This is so odd to me. And this is someone who has younger nieces and nephews in their teens, and they go to a channel called Twitch and they watch other kids play video games. I was the bratty kid that was like, no, it's my turn for the controller. I could not imagine having to sit there and watch them, but this is something they really enjoy. And the esports side of it are these kids that are literally professional video game players, simulated computer games, whatever it may be, so much so that the Luxor here in Vegas built an arena for them. We're talking 10, 20, $100,000 prize pools every weekend. And we know that betting is available on these events and it's going to continue to do so. And as those kids that I mentioned that are in their mid-teens, early 20s become able to bet on these things, they're absolutely going to. And it's a unique experience. And I think that if you could get involved from that on the ground floor to be one of the first businesses in your area to either host an esporting event or to be able to get a sports book on board with being able to bet and then host that event, that's huge money. We're talking, it's a very unique thing, like I mentioned, and you even said that is not something I've done a lot of research on, but every time I look into it, we're talking millions and millions of dollars for video games. And this is truly the future.
And the thing about esports is it crosses over every boundary. I mean, it's international. It crosses language barriers. It crosses gender, race barriers. It's everyone just playing these games competitively. And it's a huge upside to the world of esports for sure. Yeah, the one thing that you've mentioned a couple times so far in our chat, and it's that idea of engagement and the sports bettor as needing to really be engaged. And I know I took this because these are a couple of very specific social apps that are all about sports betting. You've got BetSperts where it allows you to find other experts in different leagues and they can compare bets. You can ask for advice. Book It Sports. Again, I'm not doing this as a sales job, everyone, but these are just some examples here where these apps are specifically designed to engage the diverse sports bettor and get you involved with people who like the same things that you like. I mean, can you see this kind of just still taking off, Kelly? I mean, what's your take on some of this?
Craig, I think almost every major app now has something like this. I believe ESPN does. I know Bleacher Report does. The Action Network, that is a newer company that came around just a couple of years ago, started by a few former ESPN employees. They do the same thing where you go in and you say, okay, these are my wagers for the day, and someone else can follow along with you. They can disagree with you, whatever it is. And you're right. It is very, very interactive, and it flows over to other social media channels as well. Primarily, I've noticed Twitter, but it is really interesting to be able to log on, see what other people are on, and go, what am I missing here? To be able to look at some of the data points. And these are all things that you're absolutely right. This group that I would say is probably under 28 currently, engagement is key. I mean, look what we see with them on Instagram. They're constantly evolving and changing because what we're giving them is not enough. They want it, and they want it right now, and these apps provide that for them.
Yeah, it's a huge potential growth area too. And you know, you said engagement, and let's talk a little bit more about kind of the idea of what the modern sports bettor really looks like. We touched on it a little bit, but I think there's still some very big misconceptions about what the current sports bettor looks like. You know, we've got some images here with you know, the old school gents on the left, and the young, active crowd on the right, and then of course in the middle was that took the country by storm when a sports bettor was winning at Jeopardy a few months ago, or about a year ago actually. In your idea, what's the modern sports bettor look like? And if I'm a small business, what do I need to be thinking about from a kind of a demographic standpoint?
Well, to use James as an example, the gentleman who won millions of dollars on Jeopardy, well, let's look at it from this perspective. Clearly, he's a very bright guy. He has high intelligence and he knows his trivia. How does that correlate to sports betting? It does and it doesn't. A lot of these guys have their own algorithms, or they share data points, whatever it may be. I mean, if you could see my desk right now, and I've got about 5 NFL magazines, I've got just notes scattered everywhere with paper clips so I can try to keep everything. And then my desktop of my computer is filled with documents because it's Excel spreadsheets, it is newsletters, the more information you can get is going to make you a better sports bettor. And that's what I really try to strive to do at work, is to try to educate and entertain people at the same time. It's kind of a fine line every once in a while, because I got to put on my glasses and tell everybody, hey, you have to do this way if you want to be a winner long term. But it's such a diverse crowd. To say that the Jameses of the world are probably about 1%, that's probably accurate. But the group on the right, the men, the women, having fun at a bar, drinking beer, cheering for their bets, that's the average sports bettor. They're a sports fan that's now taken it to just a little different level, where they're willing to put their money where their mouth is, so to speak, whether it's on their team, against their team. But I've realized over the last few years, people were starved for help outside of just going to a regular website and buying picks, and someone says, bet this. They want to know why they're betting it. They want to listen to you and hear you say, hey, the Ravens might not be a good value this week at -7.5. You're laying too many points. It's worth a look here on the Steelers at home. Why? And you give your data points, whether it's home field advantage, whether it's a certain wide receiver out for the Ravens, and how that calculates into the line. I think that we don't give this group of people enough credit for how smart they really are.
Yeah, you know, and that's one of the things I wanted to share this next slide, because, whoops, I went too far, sorry. Because this actually kind of describes the different types of fans out there and what their motivation is, how frequently they may bet. And this is a diverse group of fans. And what's interesting is that you and I, as sports bettors, have moved up and down this, or across this list, at different points in our sports betting career, based on how much disposable income we have, or where we're at, even from a career standpoint. But this just kind of gives an idea of when you talk about a target market demographic, sports bettors are all over the spectrum.
You know, Craig, they really are. And myself, I've been at least 4 of these archetypes. Now, How you move, as you mentioned, depends on disposable income, knowledge, how much time you put in. Of course, the casual dabbers have maybe not as much free time, maybe not as much disposable income, but their buddies are betting on Saturday. So they turn to their buddies and they say, okay, I want to make a couple of wagers here at this kiosk because we're at this location, right? Or I'm going to the game, so I'd like to have some action on it. Those type of guys are, I would say, probably, let's call it 10% of the market. As you mentioned in your columns here, it's social pressure. Hey man, you got to have a bet on the game too. It makes it more fun. The super fans are definitely the guys that are in love with whatever sport they're betting on, and they want to bet every single type of game on the board. That's where they kind of tie in with the action chasers. I was an action junkie at one point in time. You lose enough money betting too many games, and you will soon learn that being an action junkie is not a profitable way to live. It is the most fun. It is the biggest roller coaster ride of your life. I would put myself in the would-be pros column. If I had if I was a sharp, as you see in the left column, I would not be here, guys. I'd be living somewhere, probably in Central America, hanging out on the beach with my laptop, putting my bets, closing it, not watching the game. Those are the sharp guys that I know. You had a picture of James from Jeopardy, and James is very close to what I'd put in that category. He does a little bit of different stuff, which we won't go down that rabbit hole, but he is very bright, and he bets with his increments for a certain reason. He is not a high roller per se. Those high rollers are the guys that come to Vegas and bet $50,000 on a game because they have that type of disposable income. Those are the same guys that are going to bet $5,000 on a hand of blackjack. Let's just be honest. But yes, to kind of wrap that up, there are several archetypes, and I think that probably the biggest appeal, if I was a business owner, I would be going after the super fans with their casual dabbler friends, and probably the action chasers the most.
And they're really probably more accessible too, from a standpoint from a small businesses. Those are going to be much more accessible demographic than some of the others probably are.
Absolutely. I mean, the high rollers, typically, as we know, living in Vegas, they want everything for free. They want the free hotel room. They want the free bottle service. They just bet $100,000 on 2 games. I don't think that they're necessarily a target demographic. And then the sharp guys are probably at home or somewhere else, not wanting to go out. And, you know, if you treat it like a business, it's kind of hard to go out and enjoy it with your friends.
So the next thing, I want to get more of a take from you from a media perspective, and you know, just this week, ESPN opened up a studio at on the Strip at the Link, and so they now have a full blown studio. You've got sports betting companies that are directly involved with arenas across the country. This is a huge trend that's coming up, and what is this really just a feed and a need for more and more content? Kelly, what do you think is going on here?
It's absolutely a need for more content, but being on the ground floor in Vegas somehow solidifies it, if that makes any sense. Bleacher Report put a studio inside Caesar's Palace a year ago. That's when I went to work for them because I said, hey, I want to be a part of this. How do I get involved? ESPN is simply doing the same thing. They just have a little bit better of a view than we do over at Caesars. They're on the second floor there at the Link. It is an absolutely beautiful studio, but that is because ESPN is now ready to dive in deep with gambling, where at first they dipped their toe in. They said, okay, we've got our guys here in Bristol. We're going to try this new show. That new show was very successful. They said, okay, let's build a studio primarily with a gambling focus for all of these shows that we want to pump out content for.
And it really makes it more, it makes the concept of sports betting more acceptable among maybe some of the naysayers that have always had kind of a negative connotation to it, that this kind of legitimizes the idea that sports betting is here to stay.
Absolutely, you're right. I guess I don't want to pick on ESPN because they weren't the only ones, but I only recently downloaded the ESPN app. Before, it had really no value to me. I would use other ones that either had the current lines available, whatever, injury reports, things of that nature. ESPN kind of had, you know, that, hey, we don't know how we feel about this because they're owned by a much larger company and because it wasn't federally legal. I love the fact that major companies are getting involved. I've heard rumors of CBS coming to Vegas. I've heard rumors of Fox Sports coming to Vegas. So it sounds like these companies are coming in, putting in a big presence, and they want sports betting to be on the forefront.
And again, this is kind of like, it falls into that whole world of content and being able to bet different ways. And we've talked offline about some of the kind of the interesting things that are happening in the sports betting industry. And two things that you mentioned, obviously, the mobile betting is still huge, but also the concept of prop swap. This is kind of a new business that's just been over the last couple of years. Tell us a little bit about this idea of prop swap.
Prop swap is such a unique thing. At first, I didn't understand it. I was like, why would somebody want to buy someone else's ticket? Well, I mentioned that Texas Tech Virginia game, and someone had a few $100s on Texas Tech to win the NCAA tournament. Sure enough, and I believe it was in the round of the final four, they were able to sell their ticket at a significant price. Someone bought it and was not able to cash that ticket because Virginia did win that game in overtime. But it's a unique perspective here for those that bet futures tickets, and they do really well. I know Ian, the owner over there, personally. I think it's a great concept. As you mentioned, mobile betting as well. These are the new waves of the future that we're starting to see, where I may, as a fan, have a $100 ticket on my team at some exorbitant rate, maybe 150 to 1 to win the national championship. And hey, if K-State wins the Big 12, there may be a K-State fan out there willing to pay me $5,000 for my ticket that only cost me 100. It's kind of a hedge, so to speak, as opposed to going to the casino yourself and making wagers on the first two playoff games. It's a sort of way to buy out of your ticket and guarantee yourself some money.
Absolutely. Now, I want to jump in a time machine with you here, Kelly. We're going to go back in time here, but I want to talk about going back in time and thinking about the journey that you took. If you were starting over in the sports betting business, or giving advice to small companies and businesses that might be wanting to get involved in the sports betting ecosystem. I put this one quote up here because you and I talked about it a lot. Failure should be our teacher, not our undertaker. Failure is delay, not defeat. It is a temporary detour, not a dead end. Failure is something we can avoid only by saying nothing, doing nothing, and being nothing. And I think this kind of relates to part of your journey. Why don't you share that with us?
My journey was a fun one. I was working as a bottle service waitress with a college degree in 2009. I had no desire a few years later to really go get what I would call a real job. I feel like I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit. I just didn't have a lot of direction. I really enjoyed sports betting, but did not listen to people when they said, hey, you've got a real talent here. What are you going to do with it? Because the dollars were not equating to what I was making at the Bellagio at the time. And I was like, this is just fun. This is a hobby. And I think I didn't take it seriously enough in the beginning. And we're talking 2010, 2011, very early on of things. And as things started to really just take off for me, I'm going, oh my gosh, I should have taken this more seriously. And I really kind of think I hurt myself a few steps along the way by not taking that advice. But I'm a firm believer of, I don't have any regrets. I think that every single move I did make, whether it was good or bad, helped me get to where I am. And I think the learning curve was steep. It was like, okay, well, you're not going to do that again. It's better to be sharper. And I've really realized to be less divisive on social media. Nobody wants to be told how bad their team's going to be that year. Everybody only wants to hear the good things that, Patrick Mahomes is going to throw for, 18 touchdowns and, these great things. If I say, hey, look, I like the under here, or man, I don't think your team's going to win 8 games, people get a little fired up. And those are kind of like my personal learning experiences. But from a business perspective, I think that if you don't get involved with sports betting, 4 or 5 years down the road, you're going to look back and say, damn it, I wish I would have listened. I think that this is a very interesting time, especially in the DC market, with sports betting being so fresh and new, that it's really important to get in there and get branded with a company or some sort of affiliate early on.
And thinking in terms of kind of the big picture too for these organizations, you had you said something interesting in when we talked the other day, and that you summed it up by saying you wish that you had just shut up and listened more. And that's really really important, is listen and learn from the experts, and really kind of partner with companies that you're really comfortable with, that are professionals in the industry, and that can benefit your company as well.
Yeah, Craig, and you're absolutely right. I did leave that part out, but it is so
Sorry, didn't mean to
important.
bring that up.
No, you're absolutely right, because that is something that there are several women that I personally am mentoring in this space that have reached out to me, and I'm like, learn from my mistakes. What took me 10 years to do. Minty, who is working for me over at Wager Talk, just got a job at Yahoo less than 1 year into this space, because she is a knowledgeable woman who speaks eloquently. And guess what? She doesn't have some fight from 2011 on her Twitter coming back to haunt her, in her professional career. Because I'm like, you have a gift. Take that gift and run with it. Don't be so arrogant to think that you know it all. Those kind of things, I think I need a constant reminder of.
Well, we're not holding that against you, Kelly, for sure. We promise. And really, it's okay to fail as long as you learn from it. And that's a really important takeaway here, is that you've had some failures. We've all had failures in our career, but it's just, how do we handle those failures? If we learn from them, that's one thing. But if we don't learn from them and continue to make them, then that's a whole different story.
Absolutely.
All right, so now I'm going to play one more time. I'm going to whip out the crystal ball, Kelly, because I'm not going to ask you for any specific picks, of course, but I am going to kind of ask you to kind of take a look at what does the future hold in this world of sports betting, especially when we're dealing with the effects of the COVID-19 crisis right now, and how this is such a unique last 8 months for the entire world. But where do you think things are going to go from here? Give us some predictions in just sports
Craig,
betting in
I have
general.
a really optimistic outlook on things, and I try to keep it that way. I think it's better for me, at least personally. And so I'm going to go with an optimistic spin here. I do think that what we've seen the NBA do, the WNBA do, and the NHL do has been magnificent. I think that this unique experience and being able to protect people as well as still be able to put out a great product has been absolutely amazing for the sports world. Now, can call it part of college football who will play. NFL, can they replicate that? College basketball, when the NBA comes back, what does that look like? Those are things I can't predict, but I am going to have a positive outlook and say that we're learning from what we've seen these sports leagues do in the month of August, and hopefully that carries over to the future. As far as the sports betting in the future, it's only going to continue to grow. I mean, the sky is the limit here. We talked about esports. Literally, Craig, in April, we were doing Madden simulations. That is the Madden video game on Xbox. And I am watching with my younger colleagues going, I can't believe I'm betting on this, because we were so starved for sports. It was like, what can we do to still give people content and still put a smile on their face, whether they're betting it, whether they're betting against their buddies, whatever it may be. It was absolutely hilarious for me personally, to get mad at a video game. Like, wait, why did Patrick Mahomes doesn't fumble on the 1 yard line. How did this happen? These kind of hilarious things where we're trying to do everything we can to keep the spirit up and to keep everybody happy. I think it has kind of opened up a new window to things and a new outlook on things. And I think the future of sports betting is incredibly bright. As more and more companies get involved, it's only going to grow bigger and bigger. And the whole stigma that we talked about earlier, the whole generalization, that stuff is already starting to fade away. I think it's going to just be somewhere in the history books, when we talk about, guys in backroom alleys taking bets and dropping off envelopes and collecting envelopes on, Monday afternoon. Those kind of days are behind us now.
And that really just opens the door for so much opportunity for small, diverse businesses too, because that acceptance is really critical for the sports betting industry when you think about it.
It is. And I think, let's use my mom, for example. I did look, and she's not on the call. She must be too busy for me. She lives in Kansas, and, we have elections coming up. And one of the things that's on the ballot in the state of Kansas is sports betting. She gets a knock on her door from some guy who's reached out to me on Twitter several times. And here's this kid saying, my biggest platform is sports betting. And I said, well, Mom, do you agree with this other policy? She goes, well, I haven't looked at it yet, but I thought sports betting here in Kansas is a great idea. And I'm like, okay, Mom, that's awesome. Because it is interesting to see that now we're even seeing politicians in certain states run on these platforms because they know the dollar revenue that is at stake. It's similar to marijuana, for example. We've seen marijuana become legal in several states. All of a sudden, sports betting is now legal in 21 states. I believe we have 8 states on the docket for this November. Pretty soon, those states without sports betting are going to be kind of pushed to the wayside. So we're going to see it become more and more and more accessible. The state of Illinois kind of initially said, we don't want to do in-person signups, so you had to drive to basically another state to sign up for DraftKings. It was kind of a weird thing. And now Governor Pritzker came back and said, okay, we get it. You guys are all driving, to St. Louis to sign up for this app. Okay, we're going to reopen in-person signups, things like that. I do think that the market is driven by the bettors, and we're going to continue to see that in the future.
And one thing that we've talked a little bit about is the type of bets that are really going to engage these younger people that are so in need of the social aspect and to make it a fun experience. And you talked a little bit about the concept of in-game betting, and we've talked about it on a few of these other programs as being kind of a wave of the future. So do you think in-game betting, so while the contest is still being played, there's bets you can make, is that still going to be as huge in the future?
I would say less than 5 years, it will overtake straight bets, parlays, all of that stuff. Because what you see when you open up your app on in-game betting, you're watching the game. You're able to bet as the game goes along. Myself, for example, I bet sides and totals. Every once in a while, I'll bet some season win totals. Nothing too crazy. But as I've been doing this NBA bet stream, I've even warmed up to in-game betting going, wait a minute. If I have to lay 6.5 in game, but all of a sudden Portland goes up 10-0 over the Lakers, I now only have to lay -4 in game with the Lakers. I still like the Lakers. Sure, Portland went on an early run, but we've got 4 quarters here. You can now find better numbers, side or total in game. And even more so that's interesting is you can bet, will there be an overtime? Will the next bucket be a 2-pointer or a 3-pointer? A free throw? You're going to see it in football. Will the next play be a run play? Will it be a pass play? I mean, the amount of bets that we're hearing some of these sports books are willing to offer are absolutely insane. It is going to be click, 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 click. I mean, you're going to be able to go. I've heard of, you showed the link earlier, I've heard of different sports books talking about having a tablet in the booth where you can just bet the entire game as it goes on. And that's what we talked about with that younger generation. They are very hungry for action. They are the action seekers, to use your archetypes page, for example.
And there really is, there's a lot of opportunity in sports betting from, even if you think from an infrastructure standpoint. I think a lot of us have seen those Amazon commercials for Amazon Web Services where it focuses on probability and numbers of a football game, and that they're able to provide all this massive amount of data at such high rates of speed, and that's a whole other field of interest in sports betting, is kind of the behind the scenes infrastructure and things that have to happen too. Tremendous opportunities.
You're absolutely right. And sometimes it can even be data overload. For me personally, I know that I want all of the information that I can have, but now you have to sift through it and decide which information you're going to actually use. You're right. There is just so many different outlets out there with either partnerships to brand with or to be on board with. Whatever you can do to get in this industry, I highly recommend doing it.
Well, I think that brings us to an end of our presentation for today's presentation, and I'd like to open this up. Of course, first of all, thank you, Kelly, very much for the last hour of engagement. Fantastic. We really appreciate it. But we want to look over to and ask Michael if there's any questions that have come up that Kelly and I can address for the audience. We're happy to tackle any questions.
It looks like only one question, and that's posed to Kelly. The question is, what's your annual diversity spend for event planning and production?
So that's a really great question. At Wager Talk, being such a new company, It's tough to say. We are able to do some events, and now with COVID, we're able to save some money since everyone is working from home from a studio perspective. But interesting enough, we just got off a call before I did this with Bleacher Report, and it was a whole Bleacher Report wide call. Our CEO from Turner Sports was on, and they are talking about spending millions and millions of dollars over the next year and subsequent years on events such as the Super Bowl, hosting events that are centered around sports betting, things of that nature. And I'm really excited for it because when big companies are involved, more elaborate events can be done. And so I don't have a specific number amount. For Wager Talk, I can kind of speak to, hey, look, we showed the picture of the Westgate earlier where we spent a few $1,000s to host a party. We invited out clients and just really wanted to show them what it was like to be able to enjoy that experience. But Bleacher Report and much larger companies, the Action Network, ESPN, I'm saying those numbers are in the tens of millions for a budget to be able to have these expenditures. I think it's very exciting what we're seeing companies willing to spend for sports betting, which again, 10 years ago, this was unheard of.
And it is, I'll just chime in quickly. I think, it's also such an event-centric business, as we talked about, when you get into the realm of the Super Bowl parties, in essence. And I think companies are going to be, especially post-COVID, they're going to be willing to invest in attracting diverse customers to these events because they know that they can monetize not only through sports betting, but monetize some of the ancillary food and beverage events. But in essence, also create what I would say are brand loyalists. They're going to be loyal to your brand, and that's a key thing that then gets back to what Kelly talked about with engagement and building your brand and really being intelligent in your engagement with your customers.
Yeah, Craig, you're absolutely right. We hosted a party, I believe it was the week before Super Bowl, just because it's kind of a downtime. Obviously, there's the Pro Bowl, but there's not a whole lot going on with sports during that week. Myself, my co-host, Cabby Richards, and Chad Ochocinco joined us. We had a party at Caesars for all of the Bleacher fans that were in town. It was so much fun. Don't ever let me take too many tequila shots and have the mic. That is the side note. But then all jokes aside, we gave out prizes, we gave out jerseys. We had the best time. And you're absolutely right. That was a very diverse group of people. We had older gentlemen that I knew from social media that showed up. We had younger guys that I'm going, do I need to check your ID? Are you sure you guys are 21? You guys are making me feel really old. College kids that came from UNLV. Other former athletes that Chad had invited, TJ Husmanzada. See, this is why I don't actually call games. TJ showed up because he happened to be in town, and Chad said, hey, he used to play in the Bengals with me. Come here. It was such a fun event. Those type of things are so awesome. And of course, the game went under. We all got to cash tickets, and everybody was really happy.
So we have two more questions.
Perfect.
What is the initial investment? And do I need to start a sports book?
That's actually a really good question. I know here in the state of Nevada, Craig can speak to it more. We're talking millions of dollars here in the state of Nevada. The state of Nevada, we have very strict gaming regulations. For example, I don't own a sports book, but what I own is a company that allows out-of-state residents to participate in the local contests that we have. So I've been using my mom as a good example. My mom lives in Kansas. She wants to enter the Circa Millions contest, which is 5 NFL games against the spread every single week. I now am able to do that for her. She flies out, signs up, and I'm signed up on her behalf. So a sports book itself may not be tangible, and you might not be able to financially be able to do that, but find a niche market within sports betting that you can make hard dollars from, and I promise you, you will not regret it.
One final question. What are some industry organizations for women in the sports betting industry?
That's funny. There aren't. And I've had many people tell me, Kelly, when are we going to do this? And I'm like, holy cow, I'm way too busy for this. But in all seriousness, I think it needs to be done. One of the things that we just launched at Bleacher Report is the BR Women's Network that we've already had, which is great, is now segueing into more of a diverse group where it's not just women focused, where it's hey, this is a very diverse group of people where we can all come together and share ideas and talk about it. Now, I made the suggestion of actually having our own sports betting group. There's only 7 of us that got involved today when I made the chat on Slack, but we're going to start doing meetings and being able to talk about it where I can educate these women in the space. But that is something that I need to do. And I think it's something that I need to make my passion, because no one else is going to create it unless there's other women out there looking to do it. I think it would be a great group and a way to really educate one another, and as well as have them learn from me, whether it's good or bad, indifferent. I think it's something that's really important. So thank you for that, because I need that extra push every once in a while to remind myself that I need to have those type of events happen.
And there are, I'll just chime in real quick, Michael. There are organizations. One is Global Gaming Women. That is they've been around since 2016, and at their core value is to kind of inspire and influence the development of women in the overarching gaming industry. So Global Gaming Women is an organization that the university's been involved with, and it's not specific to sports betting, because I think, Kelly, that's a great idea. I would love to see that. But it is for the kind of the overarching gaming industry itself. Global Gaming Women is certainly one that really kind of tries to inspire and develop women in that industry. Absolutely.
Well, we are out of time. Thank you so much, Kelly, for such a great presentation, and Craig, as always. Thank you so much. Some of these questions that are in the chat, the last two, can I think be answered internally, so we'll just reach out. Thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to hopefully you all joining us again next month.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.